Today we're going to be looking at layers and layer styles, as well as how to work closely with Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. We'll mostly be focusing on Photoshop because we've already learned a lot about Illustrator. But over here in Illustrator, I've actually created 4 different vectors, the suits of cards. So we've got clubs, hearts, spades, and diamonds. And over here in Adobe Photoshop, I've brought each of these in separately, and I've applied different layer styles to them. So you can see here I've got my clubs, and it's bluish with an animal print. It has an outline. It looks a bit 3D, and it's got the pattern inside. Here I have this spade suit, and it has actually all of the different card suits within it. It also has an outline and a drop shadow, as well as a bit of a contour. And then finally over here I've created a pink heart that has a dashed outline and a black outline outside that. So I'm going to talk about how I created these using layer styles and the different types of layers that you can create in Photoshop. So I've already defined these vectors in a way that you know how to do just by combining shapes and moving anchor points. So I'll grab my my club here, and I'm just going to right click and say copy. Oh, copy's not there, so I'll click and Command C, or I can go edit copy up here. I like using my command keys, so Command C. I'm going to pop over here to Photoshop now, and I'm going to create a new custom 1000 by 1000 workspace, and I'll say create, and then I'm just going to paste that in. Now when I choose paste, you'll notice it gives me some options here. So here the two we'll be using most frequently are smart objects and shape layers. So I'm going to use a smart object. If I choose pixels, it will rasterize the vector. What that means is it turns it into pixels, which means that as you zoom in, you'll get pixels. Also, if you all of a sudden, let's say you're working in a 1000 by 1000 space and you realize, uh-oh, I need it to be bigger because I'm going to print it. When you scale up a smart object, because it's made from a vector, or if you scale up a shape layer, you'll maintain your quality of that image. However, if you scale up pixels, that's not the case. So let's go ahead and we'll work with a smart object first. So I'm going to say okay. And I'm going to stretch it out. I don't have to hold shift to maintain the aspect ratio when you're pasting in a vector. If I wanted to skew the aspect ratio this time, I could hold shift while I did it, and then it would, but I'm going to let go of shift. There we go. While I'm placing it, I can put it in the center with those pink guides that appear. And when I'm ready and I'm happy with where it's been placed, I just push the check mark. Okay. So you can see down here it has this little cloud shape. That means it's a smart object, and again, that means it can be scaled. So let's look at how layer effects work. So the first thing I do is I click on my layer, and I go up here to Layer. I can say Layer Styles, and then there are a whole bunch of things that come up. I'm just going to choose. I'm going to start with a gradient overlay to show you how that works. So I'll click there. The way it works is it's pretty subtle right now because of a past preset, but there are different sort of presets you can look at in here. There's one, for example, fading from a white to a pink. And if I just double click here, I can actually define what these colors are. So we could have a pink at the bottom, and maybe instead of pink at the top, I'll choose maybe a darker pink. If I want to start with this pink, I'm going to say cancel here. I'm going to start with this pink by double clicking, grabbing its hex code, copying that, saying OK, popping back over here, pasting the hex code, because I'm not sure my dropper worked when I tried it there, and then I'm going to maybe make it darker, and I'll say OK. So you can see it's a subtle thing, but it's going from pink at the bottom, dark at the top. And I can say okay. Now I can actually inverse or reverse that and have the dark at the bottom and the light at the top. I can also change the angle, so you can see as I drag this around. Maybe I should make it a little less subtle so it's easier to see what is happening. And you can see as I drag this around, it just changes where the gradient fill starts and ends. Now there are linear, radial, and basically I'm going to leave it all up to you to play around with. I'm going to say OK here. Actually, I'm not going to say OK because what I want to show you as well is, so we've been doing a gradient overlay, but there are other types of things we can do as well. And they are applied in this order, I believe. So we can bevel and emboss it to make it look 3D. To see the settings for a bevel and emboss, I need to click here, and then I can change the size of it. I can change the depth. I can change the softness. There's a whole bunch of stuff I can do. I'm going to turn off my gradient pattern for a sec, and I'm going to go down here to a pattern overlay. If I click there, not only can I see the patterns that are built in to Adobe, but I can also choose patterns that I've defined myself. So here's the animal print. Here is the card suit print that I created as well. So I'm going to go ahead and click on my animal one. I can change the scale of it. So as you recall, when we created this animal print, it was a fairly big pattern. So if I scroll out like that, you can't really make out what the pattern is. So sometimes you have to change the scale of the pattern so that you can actually see what it is. And I'll say OK. Oh, we've also got other things like outside stroke. What I'm going to suggest you do is play around with these and see what sorts of interesting things you can come up with. The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to move this shape just, maybe I'll scale it down. I can do that by setting Edit, Transform, and Scale. I can squish it down. You'll notice that as I drag it around, that pattern sort of doesn't move, which is kind of neat. I'm going to say OK. Let's paste in another shape so we can see what the difference is between the different layer types. So I'll grab my heart here and I'll say Edit and Copy. Then I'll come back over here. I'm going to say Edit and Paste again. Now this time, instead of choosing a smart object, we're going to create a shape layer. And I'll say OK. And this now treats our heart as if it were a shape, the same way as creating custom shapes over here. So we learned a little bit about the custom shape tool last time and these rectangles and things. So now it's going to treat this like a shape. So you might be wondering, hey, it's pink. That's interesting because I copied it over here. It was red. Well, my foreground color was pink, and so it's made my shape by default pink. So let me click it again here. Drag it around, and if I click back on my shape tool for a second, and then you'll notice a blue outline appears around this heart. I can do some interesting shape things to this as well. So if I want to change my fill, I can come up here, change that. But we can also add a stroke now because we're treating it like a shape instead of a smart layer. So let me show you some of the cool things you can do with that. I'm going to go ahead and make a white stroke. Actually, let's leave it black initially. And then we can change how many pixels it is. So you can see, okay, it's pretty big here. You can actually just type in this box too if you want to. So I'll say it's a 5-pixel stroke. But I like this. You can come up here and change. There are different types of patterns for a stroke. You could do dotted lines and dashed lines. And if you go ahead and click more options here, you can do all sorts of things. So right now that dashed line is appearing in the center of the exact outline. We could have on the outside. So you'd see that kind of pattern, you know, if you were creating something and you needed someone to cut it out or indicate, hey, this is something that's cut out, you might do a dashed line. I'm going to put it inside though, because I'm going to show you some neat stuff we can do. You can play around with the size of the dashes, the size of the gap. You can actually create different patterns here too. So I can say 4, 2, 6, 2, and then that will repeat. So you'll notice when I say okay, the dashes are now different sizes. And you can do that up to 3 times. So now I can say 8, 2. And you can see it kind of creates an interesting looking pattern. All right, I'm going to go put it back to normal. More options, and I'll just say 4, 2 for now. Because we can apply layer styles to this as well. So I'm going to click up here. I'm going to say, oh, first I have to choose my selection tool or move tool. What is it called on this one? The move tool. make sure I'm selected on this layer. We'll go to Layer and Layer Styles again. And now I'm going to actually, use Stroke. I'm going to give it a black outline for a second here. Maybe I'll make that size 10. I'm going to say OK. But now when I come back, I'm going to click my Shape tool, make sure this layer is selected, and now I'm going to change these to white. And it's just interesting the things you can do with a combination of, oops, I'm going crazy. I'm just clicking randomly, causing problems. Let me delete that layer. I can click the layer here I've just created and push the trash bin to get rid of it. So we can use a combination of the effects that can be applied to shapes and layer styles to do interesting things. So now we've kind of got a double outline. We've got white and then black. I could play around with that to see what I like. Maybe I don't actually want a dashed outline. Maybe I want this. And we can increase the size of the stroke. You can see what it does there, like that. And I can say more options, and it's centered again, so I can say I want that to be inside. And now we have, it almost looks like a heart from a health thing in a video game, like Zelda or something like that. Anyway, lots of fun things you can do with layer styles. So your task today is to do something creative and interesting by first grabbing a vector, something maybe you've created in the past from Adobe Illustrator, or create something new if you'd like. Bring it over here to Photoshop, and I'd like you to create something where you're creating a smart object and applying layer styles, and also where you're creating a new shape layer and applying both shape styles and layer styles. Have fun.